Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, the tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. We have a real adventurer on today. Super excited to have this conversation. We've got Abdylla Geldiyev with Undiscovered Frontiers. He's the founder and managing director. Abdylla, did I say your last name right?
You said it absolutely correctly. Absolutely correctly, Jason.
Usually we practice before, and then as soon as I hit record, I get it all messed up. But I gave you a warning that might happen, but I guess we got through it. So
I'm happy you did not say Goldstein.
Exactly. We did good. Not that there's anything wrong with that name, but Abdylla, I'm just super excited to have you here. We spoke a few weeks ago, had a great conversation. I asked you to come back on and share your time and your story with the audience. And I know you went on a big trip since then. Actually, you sent me an email with a bunch of wonderful photos. So we're going to get into that at some point in this conversation, I'm sure. But before we do that, let's give our listeners kind of, the 30, 60-second elevator pitch on what is Undiscovered Frontiers. What do you guys do? Who are your ideal clients? Where do you go? And what do you do when you're there?
First of all, Jason, thank you so much for inviting me on your podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today. Now, Undiscovered Frontiers is a brand that tries to offer travelers off the beaten path experience in the 5 stands. The countries like Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan. We also offer Turkey as a destination. At the same time, we promote Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Armenia. And these are the bread and butter for Undiscovered Frontiers. Now,
I'm going to stop you for a second because I love that. And you said kind of these off the beaten path places, and then everything you named, except for maybe Turkey, is definitely off the beaten path. And as you know, I'm sitting here in the country of Georgia right now, so that's part of why I was so excited to chat with you. But anyway, please continue. What do your clients do in those places?
Lots of travelers. Now, it's those destinations at the moment are becoming very popular because travelers around the world, they go to Europe and other beautiful countries all around the world. But now, those destinations like 5 stands, South Caucasus, are off the beaten path. So they explore the unique historical archaeological sites. They connect with the local cultures and traditions. They connect with the local audience and the local people. That makes those experiences unique. And that's why I call those destinations off the beaten path destinations.
All right. Very, very cool. What's probably getting ahead of myself, but I want to ask, out of all the 5 stands, this is just a quick question, then we're going to move on, but out of the 5 stands, what's the one that surprises people the most?
That's a very hard question.
I knew you were going to say
that. That's a hard question because all 5 stands are very unique in their own way. Uzbekistan is unique in its own way. Tajikistan is unique in its own way. Kyrgyzstan is unique in its own way. Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan. So let me quickly do a short comparison so you understand when I say unique. Uzbekistan. I just came from Uzbekistan, a mind-blowing country in terms of history. When you come to Samarkand, you are in the 14th century old town. It's mind-blowing. You see the monuments with the blue and turquoise tiles, so grandeur, so majestic, right? Tajikistan is another mind-blowing destination. It has like a world-known Pamir highway. The 80% of the country is covered with the rock terrain and mountains. Kyrgyzstan, the Alps of Central Asia, those blue and turquoise lakes, those pine forests, those people riding their horses. Kazakhstan, the steppes, a huge country, that offers mountains, lakes, the futuristic architecture, the places like Almaty, Astana, right? Now, Turkmenistan is another beast itself. It's a country of surrealistic architecture. The country is like 80% desert. The country is rich with the natural resources. They have obsession of constructing everything from the marble. They are the masters of the horse riding. Every stand is unique, Jason. I would lie if I say I love this one more than the other, because every stand has its own beauty that can offer to the very experienced or seasoned traveler.
I love your response, and I want to assure you, I know better than to ask what's your favorite. Because I know when people ask me, I travel a lot. Oh, where's your favorite place? That's a really impossible question. So let me maybe clarify the question. Great response. And is there one of those that just is more like, well, it's a tough question because I don't think a lot of people have a real clear idea of what these places are like. So
right.
Their expectations may not be that firmed up like they would be for Venice or Paris or something like that. But I guess the question is there one of them that people tend to go to and they're like, wow, that was totally different than what I saw on YouTube or what I expected by reading these blog posts? Is it just everyone's just better than what they expected?
It's a good point, Jason. And we have our clients that just came back from Uzbekistan. And, I just spoke 2 days ago with the clients, a couple, and they had a private trip in Uzbekistan. They've been reading about Uzbekistan and they prepared for this trip. It was not just a trip like out of the blue. So they contacted us, we prepared their itinerary, and they were very, very detailed, and they wanted to have like very unusual things. They said like, we don't want to do repetitive things. I said, okay, we will plan this itinerary for you. So we created the itinerary. They traveled like 10 days in Uzbekistan, and they came back and they said, Abdylla, it's mind-blowing. And I was smiling. I said, what's mind-blowing? Just expand it. Tell me more. What's mind-blowing in your opinion? And they said, like, everything we've been reading, everything like we've been expecting, it's different. They said the hotels are lovely. They said the historical sites. He said, me and my wife, we felt like we are in a sort of a fairy tale in the evening time when we were in Samarkand, because Samarkand has this famous Registan square. And this is the square where there are like 3 huge theological schools are located, and they are so grandeur, 14th, 15th century architecture and everything.
What's the name of the square?
Registan.
Okay.
Registan.
So not to be confused with reggae. There's no Bob Marley sculptures or okay.
No.
All right.
No, absolutely no. So Registan is it's a historical place in Samarkand. So they were shocked by the beauty of Uzbekistan. They were shocked by the hospitality, and they said it's like so amazing how sincere, how things are like untouched yet. Now Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan is gaining a crazy popularity among the travelers, because everybody hears these stories. Hey, I went to Tajikistan. Hey, I went to Uzbekistan. what's that Uzbekistan? What's that Turkmenistan? And people like start to Google. They Google Turkmenistan. They see this, surrealistic like, fire crater, the gas crater. They, oh my God, what is this? I'm sure you know about this fire crater. So yeah. So people like they it is like a normal destination, but when they travel to that country, they come back and they rave about it. Rave about food, rave about hotels, rave about people, rave about the unique insider access experiences, right? So when you travel, you want to have those insider access experiences. In Uzbekistan, I mean, it's a mind-blowing. I was in the process of creating the silk paper. Can you imagine the technology of creation of the silk paper that dates back to the 8th century AD? It's like mind blowing. I was sitting with a lady. I had a knife. I had a mulberry bark. I was like stripping off that bark, soaking it in the water, and they press that paper and they show it what you did. What else do you want? It's like off the world experiences.
Pretty cool. And I suspect that in the stands, you mentioned that it's very popular right now, but I think I want to kind of keep that in perspective. And I don't know, because I haven't been. You're the expert on the area. But when I hear very popular, sometimes that sounds like, I'm trying to think of some names of maybe Santorini or Venice or the Colosseum. Those places are popular. But I think what you're saying is a different thing when you use the word popular. And I guess the question is, are the stands experiencing any of this overpopulation stuff, or not population, over tourism stuff? Is that even having an impact there, or are they? You're shaking your head. For those of you that can't see him on the screen. He's shaking his head. So go ahead. I'll let you jump in and answer.
Central Asia is a huge country. There are 5 countries that escaped and they became independent after the fall of the Soviet Union. Those 5 countries are bordering with China on the east. Those 5 stands on the top. They have a huge Russia that stretched in the north, And under the south of 5 stands, there are countries like Iran, there are countries like Afghanistan covering that whole perimeter in the south. So that's a very gigantic geographical location. Now, coming back to your question, when you say that, when you ask me if they experience any infrastructure issues in terms of the high number of the tourists coming to the stands.
Either infrastructure or just societal type of issues coming from tourism?
No, I mean, the government in those countries, they invest a lot of money into constructing appropriate tourism infrastructures, like constructing new hotels. They are building a proper infrastructures, the roads, that the tour operators, they invest into the transportation options. Yes, there are tourists coming to all 5 stands, but they are not as massive as it happens in Venice. They are not as massive as it happens in Paris. Paris is the king or a queen of the tourism. Millions of people travel to Paris.
Right.
Yes, Uzbekistan or Turkmenistan or any of those stands, there are international travelers coming, but it's not as massive as it happens in other famous touristic destinations.
I'm wondering if I went to the capital of, maybe there's differences between the stands, but let's say I go to the capital of Uzbekistan and I spend a couple weeks. Am I likely to see like souvenir shops and obvious tourists walking on the street, or is it almost like kind of, oh, that person looks like they might be a tourist, or is it exception to the rule, or what is it like?
It's a very good point. There are certain areas in all 5 stands. Those 5 stands and the tourists are mainly concentrated in the famous historical archaeological sites. Okay. So you might be wandering in a city. You might come across to the international travelers, And you might say, yes, that's a tourist, that's obvious, but you will not see like a roaming herd of tourists like coming in the street.
And I'm just guessing, gosh, I hope this doesn't sound critical in any way, but I'm guessing that the tourists that you see in the stands maybe don't dress or behave quite the same as the average tourist you might see in Rome or Paris or Miami or Honolulu. Is that because it just the reason to go there? I mean, you mentioned the famous places in the five stands, and I'm like, I don't know any of them. So they're not that famous. But if you're a history buff or you're really interested in the region for some reason, yeah, it's famous to them, but people don't go there for a long weekend. You know, this is like they're making a commitment to go there. Is that without knocking anybody's the way they dress or where they're from? But I mean, is that generally the case? The travelers there are probably a little different.
You know, there are a couple of things, important details to mention. You know, first, the international travelers who go to any of the stands, you know, they dress as usually they dress in other parts of the world. Okay. All five stands are very secular. You know, there is no restriction in the clothing. There is no, you know, a strict clothing requirement. For instance, if you travel to Saudi Arabia, you know, the ladies need to have the long gowns. You know, everybody needs to cover like long below the knees and things like that. But in all five stands are secular countries. So international travelers, they are not obliged to have like a proper clothing cover their bodies. Now, you want to go in the shorts, you can be in the shorts. My buddy who traveled with me in Uzbekistan, he had his cowboy hat, and everybody was looking at him and saying like USA. He's like, yeah, I'm from USA.
I'm happy you mentioned that, because when I talked about the way people dressed and the tourists, I actually wasn't really even thinking about the cultural, dressing differences or secular versus, Islamics or whatever, more religious way of dressing and appearance. But I was also thinking probably not as a high percentage of people in flip-flops with tank tops or Bud Light t-shirts, maybe cowboy hats, but cowboy hats are cool.
Yeah. Just to add more, again, I mean, the most important thing for international travelers, just respect the local culture and traditions. When you enter like a grandeur mosque or a sort of a pilgrimage site, it's respect to the locals, to the culture, to have a proper attire and dressing. But when you go, I was sitting just next to the same Registan Square in Samarkand. There is a very nice, local cafe. There are like canaries singing. They cook their traditional dish known as plaf. Like I will tell more about the dish. They cook it. They spin it in front of you. They shovel that huge pot with the rice. I saw people in the flip-flops. I saw the people in the...
You did? Okay.
Yeah. I saw people in like shorts. That's fine. And my friend, I want to mention his name. His name is Harv Howard, and he is 27 years old, and he was hiking with me. I'm just kidding. I'm always making him a compliment saying 27. He's actually 72. But coming back to the subject, yes, I mean, clothing, people are free to dress however they like. I mean, there is no like strict rules and regulations. It's a secular country. Now, I also want to comment on a small thing that you mentioned about the Uzbekistan or other stands being famous versus to the, Colosseum in a Rome or any other place in Venice. The historical and archaeological sites and certain monuments in all those five stands, they are inscribed on the World Heritage List of UNESCO. So they are in the records of UNESCO.
I'm not saying they're not important or significant. I'm just saying. As far as sheer numbers of people going, like Instagram photos, I see a lot more Instagram photos of other stuff, but that's actually an appeal to me. I'd rather go to places where I don't see
Right,
where
right,
I don't
right.
see so many Instagram photos. So anyway,
Right.
go ahead.
And
Yeah.
what makes those UNESCO sites so unique, and it makes unique for the international traveler. I travel the world. I travel a lot. I travel Europe and the you name it, different parts of the world. But when I go to the five stands, I feel like I'm a VIP. You know why?
Mm.
Because there is lots of attention to you. There is, you are not treated like an ordinary tourist like in other countries. Like people love international travelers. They want to interact. They want to talk to you. They will ask you, what made you to decide to come to Uzbekistan? And you tell them. They get so proud when you go to eat with the locals. So much attention, so much joy, and that makes the travel unique. I've been with my kids and my wife when they were younger to Europe. You see the iconic sites of Europe, right? But
Mm-hmm.
if you don't connect with the local people, the locals will whisper the small secrets, and they will say, no, 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 don't eat here, you eat there. Those kind of experiences make the travel unique. And my friend who traveled with me, and I'm giving him as an example because he is a very well-traveled person. He's seen the world, and he hiked all over the world, and he joined to hike with me in Uzbekistan. And when he was interacting with the locals, and he was telling, Abdullah, this is like amazing. I met this guy. He asked me this, and I talked to this lady. She told me this. And some locals, they speak a little bit of English. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like an advanced English, but still they can communicate. So those pieces, those small elements make the travel in Central Asia unique.
Right. And, this would probably be a great opportunity for me to mention. I mean, I've heard you mention a few times when I was in Uzbekistan, you and I both know that you were just there. I mean, I think I mentioned it earlier. So
Right.
that particular trip's very fresh in your mind. And I know this is not a I went once type of thing. So let's discuss your story a little bit. Let's change gears, go back to the very beginning, because you shared a little bit with me already the first time we chatted. And I want to make sure that our audience hears it as well. So
Yes.
Tell us your story. Where did it all start for you? And help us figure out how you got from there to where you are now.
My story starts in Turkmenistan. I was born and raised in one of the stands known as Turkmenistan. I grew up there. I graduated from the school. Then I went to the local university. I have bachelor's degree in English language and literature. So once I graduated the university, I was working as an English language teacher.
Let's just so this doesn't get past our listeners, because if they don't see, I know you're 27, but maybe you're a little older than that. I don't know. But what was going on in Turkmenistan when you were going to high school and going to college to learn how to teach English? Because it was a different world back then.
Yes. Now, very good question. Now, one important thing to mention that I was born in 1982.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with that, so the listeners, will have a perspective now. Now we know how old you are.
Yes.
So I was born in 1982, and I was the last generation that was growing during the Soviet time. And this is important, and I will explain why. So at the age of 9, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapses, right? So now all those 15 republics, the 15 republics attached to the Russia, they all claim their independence. And it's like crazy, 15, 1-5. And 1991, Soviet collapsed. I continued the school, and I see that changes when the Soviet collapsed, because there is a shortage of everything. A shortage of like groceries, shortage of daily needs. The all 15 republics, they are trying to figure out what's going to happen next. It was very interesting time.
Abdylla, let me ask you this, because I think our listeners are curious as well, because I grew up during that time, but in a totally different place.
Right.
When you say shortages, I'm thinking that almost sounds like Mother Russia was giving us everything we needed. We had plenty of food, plenty of
Correct.
gas, oil, whatever we needed back in the days when it was the Soviet Union, but then we lost that and we didn't have anything.
Right.
Help me understand that.
Yes, that's a good point. Let me clarify that nuance as well. Now, actually, Turkmenistan and all 15 republics were given to Mother Russia.
That's what I thought. That's why I wanted to bring it up.
So actually, we were giving to Mother Russia because Turkmenistan is known as a very rich country with gas. Mm-hmm. We are considered the fourth largest gas reserve of the world. We have 22 trillion cubic meters of gas at the moment in Turkmenistan.
Okay.
So we've been giving all those resources, all those beautiful, things to Russia, and now we are independent. We do have, when I say we, I refer to the 5 stands. All 5 stands, they have their natural resources. Now they need to export those goods, export those resources, and get something back, an income. To continue the existence. And when I mentioned like daily goods, or I refer to the groceries, because everything was cut, the grocery shelves were empty. Jason,
it sounds like it was almost the distribution system that was messed up, because before that, maybe Turkmenistan is giving gas to Russia.
Correct.
And then Russia's growing a bunch of wheat, or maybe they're taking wheat from somewhere else and moving it over to Turkmenistan.
Precisely.
And there was a system, and whether or not you thought it was a great system, there was a system. Right. And then all of a sudden, it's like the borders. No, I shouldn't say the borders. It's like the trucking system quit. It's like all the trucks just broke down one day. And Correct. Now it's like we have a lot of gas, but what are we going to do with a lot of gas? We can't eat it. So it took a while probably to figure out, well, who are our new trade partners and how exactly. Are we going to, is that what happened?
Exactly. That's a very good analogy, Jason. That's a very good analogy. And that's precisely what happened. Nobody exactly knew what's happening now, because, all the doors are shut. Every country declares its independence now. I am independent. What do I do? Who are my partners? So it's
trying to figure out new currencies, new trading business systems,
new everything, new healthcare system, new currency. Quickly, so all 5 stands, since they have natural resources that are in demand in the world, in the most of the economies of the world, those 5 stands, and I will give this comparison, they start to rise like phoenix bird from the ashes, if that makes sense. So
yeah, it makes sense.
They start to rise like a phoenix bird from the ashes, and they start to invest into the architecture. They start to invest into the education, building these, the most modern, most civilized schools with the very strong, technologies. They invest into the infrastructures. They build new roads, new kindergartens, and many, many other things. So that things start to move. There are lots of exchange, and most of the countries, and it's a good example to mention, like countries like Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan or Tajikistan in the Soviet time, they were giants in producing the cotton, right?
Okay.
So the cotton was like one of the biggest cultivation material that was cultivated in Central Asia. At the same time, all 5 countries, they were cultivating their wheat. So, and this, when the Soviet collapsed, people said, hey, we have lands, we have water, we have natural resources. It's going to be a couple of years, hard times, but we will overcome it. And that's what happened. And now when you look at those all 5 stands, when you travel, and this is the comment that I get from international travelers, they all come back and say, like, Abdylla, how much money is invested there? They're like non-stop constructions. They build and build. Where that money comes from? That money comes from the natural resources.
Let me ask you this, because this, before I forget.
Right.
I suspect that immediately after the fall of the Soviet Union, there were a lot of hard times. I think it would be normal then for people that maybe didn't really like being part of the Soviet Union, didn't really care for the situation. But I bet for a few years, there were an awful lot of them were like, oh man, I wish we could go back in time. I wish we could go back to the way it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I think that's normal. Fast forward to today, not as many people. Well, I guess here's my question. Are there still people alive today in the stands that just really miss the good old Soviet days? Or do you think that I've pretty much got over that?
That's a very good point. I am very impressed with this question. There is a maybe an older generation, the generation that grow up in a very harsh Soviet system that still reminisce the days of the Soviet Union, Maybe
what do you think they reminisce about? I'm just curious. Do you have any idea? You don't feel the same way, but
there is that generation actually, and I ask very detailed questions like, what exactly you love about the Soviet Union? Well, we had like a standardized salary, the healthcare system was free, everything was free, everything was so cheap, and we were equal. So that's the Soviets classification, to have the population being equal. You all dress same, you all go same, you all. I remember my childhood. It's going to sound funny, my rucksack or my backpack that I carried to school, and all other kids that had the same backpacks. We had identical backpacks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, humans generally, we have like some basic human psychological needs, and one of those big ones is certainty. Some people value these needs differently. Some people value certainty. Other people value uncertainty, actually, on a higher level. They like variety and they like adventures and excitement. So they end up working in the tourism business. And then you've got other people that really like certainty, and they end up maybe being accountants. So you've got, I think in any former Soviet Union country probably is going to have some people that really, really valued certainty. And when that all fell, there was a period of years that were incredibly uncertain. So now, even if things got back to where they're better,
much better.
That trauma of the uncertainty, they spent 5 years thinking, oh my gosh, this is horrible. It was so much better 5 years ago. And they don't even notice that it starts to get better again. They're just still traumatized by that. I don't know. I'm just talking out of my butt here. I have no idea.
No, you are right. You are right. Because, and that's precisely like the old generation. They used to say like, it was better. The Soviets were better. But when they see the success stories of their children, of their grandchildren, how big world made small. And I want to give this comparison, how big world made small. They understand that collapse opened the borders. How many people in North America or Europe know about the countries like Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania? I can go on and on. Nobody knew about them, but all those countries are ethnically different. They are ethnical identities. They speak different language. They do have their own different culture. The Soviet collapsed. The whole world said, wow, what is this? Who are these people? Who are these Uzbek people? Who are these Turkmen people? What's their culture like? And this is how the international travel blooms. This is how the big world made small. This is how the Iron Curtain falls down and people from all over the world come to see those beautiful countries. Now, I still want to come back to my background because we skipped that part.
Yeah. So you grew up You started out in the former Soviet Union.
Yes, I
You
started.
experienced some of the transition, and
Yes.
then.
Yeah, I experienced the transition. I graduated at the university. My buddy, a good friend, he works in a travel company. Like, let me quickly think. Like 25 years ago, 25 years ago, he tells me like, Abdylla, uh, you have a good English. We need a local guide to escort an Italian guide. The Italian guy who comes to travel to Turkmenistan, he wants to travel in the desert, and he writes a book about a certain breed of the dog that lives in Karakum Desert. Karakum Desert is in Turkmenistan. It's a huge, enormous desert, and well, I had some free time, and I said, okay, I will take this offer. So I am, as a freelancer, I work with this Italian gentleman, and you won't believe me, we are still friends.
Yeah.
It's like we are still friends, and sometimes he calls me from Italy. He lives in Peverano, and like, Abdullah, when we are going to these countries, so he's a funny guy.
and it's probably
Yeah.
fair to say that had you not studied English, that opportunity would not have come up. Is that a fair statement?
I think so.
If you didn't at least speak English fairly well. I feel compelled to ask you this. Maybe it's a weird question, but
Sure.
I grew up in the 80s, mostly the 80s kid. It was the Soviet Union until I was 17 or 18. Yeah. I was fortunate. I had a class where I took a Soviet history class and actually learned about Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. And my teacher was like, "Oh, Georgia is very much like Wyoming," is where I grew up.
You're
because
right.
of the mountains and this and that. So I filed it away. I always knew what Georgia was, and I was going to go someday. Here I am. But where I'm going with this question, though, that was a total diversion. The question I'm really curious about is if in the 80s, someone said to me, I'm going to school majoring in Russian.
Right.
I think a lot of Americans would think, why are you learning Russian unless you're going to work for the CIA, the government, the military? What's right. Like, it's like, people would, like, military people go off to language school to learn Russian. It wasn't so we could do more business with them or start up tourism. It was kind of an adversarial type of thing. So I guess my question is, growing up in the former Soviet Union, was there I'm taking English because it's better for business and tourism and this and that? Or was it like, no, we need to have English speakers in the Soviet Union, so when we go to war, we've got people to... I don't know. That's weird.
I love this question. Okay.
It's weird. I'm sorry.
No. That's okay. I love this question. And I really want to make it 2 steps backwards. Now, okay. I graduated from the school, and first and foremost, Turkmenistan, after the Soviet collapse, they had a boarding school, a very new educational system that they created. They said, we need intelligent young generation to rise from this crisis that we have right now. So the government creates the boarding school, and they select very educated, very talented kids. I was not a talented kid. I mean, I got into that school very accidental. I will be very honest.
We don't need to know who your parents paid off,
That's true in a way. That's true in a way. That's true in a way. I was not the only talent that I was a trouble kid when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And the reason I was given to the boarding school, you are going to laugh. Our neighbors, they were tired of me because I was bullying the kids. And and the neighbors, the ladies would say to my mom, come on, you need to send this boy somewhere else. He's bullying our kids. So that's the reason. It's incredible, but that's the truth. I was given to the boarding school because I was bullying the neighborhood.
So all the moms got together, had a bake sale to raise money to pay off somebody in the government to get you into school. So now we know the story. Okay.
Yeah. So, but The thing is, I'm going to tell you more funny stories now. So I was sent to that school, and now I start to bully the kids at the boarding school. And my dad, God bless his soul. I lost my dad years ago, and he was called by the principal. Like, I still remember the prince. I'm standing next to my dad, and principal, like, you have to direct his energy in the right direction. He's like bullying the kids. We will like send him from the boarding school.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad had a friend, and he used to be an ex-boxer. And he told my dad, like, if he's that bully, he needs to get his lesson, send him to the boxing gym.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and that made me what I am today. I was given to the boxing gym at the age of 12.
Did they actually teach you to box and let you hit back, or were you just the punching bag so you could get it out of your? Just curious.
It's a good, at the age of 12, I was given to a very known boxing coach. His name, he was Russian, Alexei Vasilievich Kalinin, known to
Mm-hmm.
the whole Soviet Union. And that guy was a master of training boxers in the Soviet Union. And his philosophy was, you need to learn shadow boxing first in order to go into the ring.
Mm-hmm.
So we spent like 6-7 months standing in front of the mirror, and doing the shadow boxing, understanding the philosophy, understanding the distance, what is a punch, how the punch is implemented. And only then we were led to the boxing bag. And after the boxing bag, the final stage was the ring.
Okay.
Making it short. So I went to that boarding school. I graduated the school with okay grades. I was not genius, and I applied to two universities. One university was in Turkey, and the government of Turkey gave a quote, a certain numbers for the students for Turkmenistan to apply to their universities. So I applied that exam. I passed the exam, and I was accepted to the university in Istanbul, in
Okay.
Turkey. But I will be very honest, my parents could not afford it at that time. And then I applied to the university inside the Turkmenistan, and I passed the grades just to be accepted to the faculty of English language and literature.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in my life happens like with the hand of God. So I entered the university. I completed the university. Then that I met this Italian guy. Then I transitioned to the travel industry. I worked years in the tourism of Central Asia. I worked with international groups and travelers coming from all over the world. I lead them as a local guide to all the historical sites. I travel with the lecturers, professors, the guidebook writers who come to Central Asia, because it is the start when all international travelers start to travel, and the people say, we need information. So all those guidebook writers, they travel to Central Asia, and I had the privilege to travel with them and learn many, many things, about Central Asia.
Was it at that time, were you able to travel and lead groups or guide in all of Central Asia, or were you primarily in Turkmenistan, or what did that look like?
That's a good point, Jason. I was primarily in Turkmenistan. I had the chances to go to Uzbekistan a couple of times, but my main focus was on Turkmenistan. The history of all 5 stands are connected. So people who travel, we used to take the groups that enter from Uzbekistan into Turkmenistan. They travel in Turkmenistan,
Right.
fly out of Turkmenistan, or fly into Turkmenistan, travel in Turkmenistan, exit to Uzbekistan, travel in Uzbekistan. They travel in Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, and they fly out back to their countries. So
Okay.
this is,
I want to take advantage of this opportunity, and maybe it's,
sure.
I don't know.
Take it.
I've watched the YouTube videos. I've seen some things that from the outside look very interesting about Turkmenistan.
Okay.
When it comes to tourism.
Mm-hmm.
And, you probably know whatever stereotypes are out there about Turkmenistan, but I've heard like it's really hard to get a visa. When you go there, you're the term I've heard is handler. You're assigned to a handler, and you
Right,
really don't wander around on your own. And these handlers are very specific about what they will show you, what they won't show you,
right,
and stuff like that. And I've heard that Turkmenistan is the least hospitable to tourism out of the other stands.
right,
And
right, right.
if somebody's still listening to this, then you answered the question. If they didn't even hear that question, it's because we edited it out because you didn't want to upset anybody. But tell me what you think.
Let's say 12 years ago or 13 years ago, traveling to Turkmenistan was a little bit problematic because the country was not that much open. And there is a process when you travel to Turkmenistan. And I can mention the requirements for the other stands, but I will focus on Turkmenistan for now. So, any international traveler who travels to Turkmenistan has to has to get a letter of invitation. There is a paper known as letter of invitation, and that letter of invitation is approved by the government of Turkmenistan, to be precise, Immigration Service of Turkmenistan. So the local tour operator applies on your behalf or on the behalf of international traveler for this letter of invitation. The government of Turkmenistan has certain regulations for international travelers, and those regulations are: if you are an international traveler and you are exploring the historical sites, there is a requirement to attach a local guide who will escort you during this trip. It was before, as you rightly pointed on, that guy, the local guide, would be attached to you and always be with you, but not anymore. It's much easier now. There are lots of international travelers who have their local guides on the days of the sightseeing only, and on their leisure days, like a free day in Ashgabat or free day here or there, they have their own. You can walk in the streets. You can go but there are some like requirements not to take the pictures of certain strategical buildings. I'm still confused. What are those strategical buildings? So, yeah. So,
you know what though?
Go ahead.
Here's what somebody listen. You live in the States, so you're familiar with the States, but somebody's going to listen to this and say, I can't believe there's a guy with a U.S. passport talking about how friggin' difficult it is to go to Turkmenistan and how, you have to have a letter of invitation. Ooh, right. So difficult, when you look at, how hard it is for most people to get into the U.S. with visa fees and sponsors and all this. So I guess we get to keep this in perspective, don't we?
Yeah. I mean, as I said, every country has its own regulation.
Yeah.
And even now, traveling, as you rightly pointed out, traveling to the United States is not an easy process as well, right? So you go through the interview, you pay a new visa fee, which was increased now. People need to prove this in order to be eligible for the visa. It's not easy.
And maybe you don't have to have a guide wandering around with you all the time, but you've got the law enforcement ready to stop you and check your ID at any given time and see if you overstayed your welcome or don't take. Yeah. Why are you taking pictures here? But anyway.
Well, yeah, but the reality is, coming back to Turkmenistan, now the process of obtaining the letter to Turkmenistan, letter of invitation, that's the name of that document. So what that really paper does is, once it gets approved, now you could apply for that letter only like 2 months prior to your travel to Turkmenistan. Now they expanded that period, and you can apply like as early as you can. So you can apply for it. People travel to Turkmenistan. And actually, next year, I have a group of English travelers, 4 English guys who, and I know one of them, they want to do a unique hike in Turkmenistan. So they want to see the, footprints of the dinosaurs. They want to see the famous Turkmenbashi city on the Caspian Sea of Turkmenistan. That's a very unique place in Turkmenistan. They want to see the Yangikala Canyon in Turkmenistan, which is known as the Red Canyon of Central Asia. So I created the hiking itinerary that nobody did in the history of the tourism of Turkmenistan. So I am
And
the
you would
guy.
know.
And
Yeah.
I created that hiking route, which stretches in the Kopet Dağ mountains of Turkmenistan. So they will be hiking, and I will be hiking with them. I want to test that route and offer it to the international travelers. As I said, Undiscovered Frontiers is going to be first North American company that offers such thing. Now, I also want to open a small paragraph here. Undiscovered Frontiers, we do specialize in the historical, cultural, ethnographical tours, but at the same time, we want to be innovative, creative, and we create these trekking and outdoor adventures. So we are now creating a trekking outdoor adventure. I just came from a trip from Uzbekistan. That's like a whole novel that I can tell about. Now I am creating a new trekking adventure in Turkmenistan. Then I will do Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan. So those trekking adventures, they are not like trekking only. So we combine trekking, then leisure days in the most important historical cities of those countries. Then we combine staying with the local families. The families I stayed in Uzbekistan during this hike, 120 kilometers during this trek, it was, Jason, out of the world. The hospitality, the food, the connection. I was singing with the locals, I was dancing with the locals. We had a great, great time in Uzbekistan.
It sounds like fun. And you had sent me, maybe I think I mentioned it when we first got on here, but you'd sent me an email right after that trip, just full of photos. And it looks like so much fun. And I'm pretty close. Georgia's not far away. So I've been trying to decide, should I head towards Asia or should I head towards proper Europe or whatever? And I'm kind of leaning towards the stands.
You will not regret. You will not regret.
We should touch on, though, you're guiding foreigners, international visitors in Turkmenistan, but then you left at some point. So we missed some steps. So what happened?
Right. So I work in the travel company in Turkmenistan as a local guide. Then I was asked to be a salesperson in the same travel company. Then I start to travel all the biggest tourism exhibitions around the globe.
Okay. Yep.
UTM, in London, Jata Expo in Tokyo, all the biggest exhibitions of the world. I travel, I signed the contracts with the international tour operators. So international travelers come to visit the Turkmenistan and other stands. So eventually, and I will be very honest on this point, eventually I had a period in my life asking me, what is next? Mm-hmm. What is next? And, I inherited adventurous spirit from my dad. The guy in the Soviet Union collapsed, 1991. He somehow finds a flight ticket to Moscow, finds another flight ticket from Moscow to Germany, hops on the car, drives thousands of miles from Germany back to Turkmenistan. That adventurous,
That's cool.
So,
yeah,
he was an extraordinary person, and I thank God that I saw all these examples, and I'm trying to pass similar crazy examples to my boys. And I have my son. He just graduated international relations. He has a bachelor's degree, and he is very much into the travel. He helps me with Undiscovered Frontiers brand. He does a lot behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. But so I decided to come to United States. I came to United States as international student.
Okay.
And I came to United States as international student.
But did you already, I'm just trying to do some math in my head. You
Yes.
already had a family at this
Yes.
point. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
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 Okay.
I had my. I was married. My kids were very small, so they were small, and I came to United States as a student. Then I brought my wife and my kids to United States as my dependents.
Hmm.
Then I managed to prove in United States that I have a certain experience and knowledge in the travel industry. So I was given and granted, they call it a green card,
Hmm.
employment based. So after that, years passed. I worked in different travel companies all over America, and at one point, and again, I want to emphasize this, my older son, who is like 23 now, and he is actually originator of the Undiscovered Frontiers brand.
Oh, cool.
He was
Okay.
he is like, Dad, you've been working in a travel business many years. I have an idea. Let's do this. And I was like working and working. I said, hey, I don't have time for this. I'm
I get it.
yeah,
I don't have
I'm
time to start a business. I'm busy working for somebody else.
yeah, yes, I was working, but I mean, long story short, he planted the seed, Then I worked in the United States in different travel companies. I was a successful salesperson in all those companies.
I'm
And
curious, when you
yeah,
were working for those companies,
yes.
were you selling stuff to Central Asia, or was it just more like a variety of things? Was it connected with where you came from or not?
No, I can, as my friends tell me, Abdillah, you can convince anybody to go to any country. You can.
So what? So what? You were selling like cruises or something?
No. I was not selling cruises. I was always, into more destinations that enrich people historically, culturally,
I know you were.
ethnographically.
The cruise thing was a joke because I think
Yeah. I know.
I don't
Yes.
want to sell cruises, but
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
okay, go ahead.
So then eventually, and there was a point I quit. I was a little bit tired. It's a lot of stress
Hmm.
to deal with the big volumes of travelers. Then I step aside, then I took a break. And at that time, my son, he did a lot of things on the back end himself, like doing. And he said, hey, Dad, I mean, you don't work for anyone now. Let's now create an undiscovered frontiers. And as I said, these unique life moments, they forge us in a different ways.
Yeah.
And I'm just telling the successful and funny part of the story, how I came to America. But
Hmm.
in reality, Jason, I was working 3 jobs. I was sleeping 4 hours. This is the real story.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
success in America did not came like a click like this. I
Yeah.
earned my success in America. I
Yeah.
work hard for it. And that's why I love America as a country. America is a great country. It's a country of opportunity. If you want to achieve something, there is no better place in the world like America. And
Hmm.
my kids are American citizens. They are very proud. We worked very hard, to
Yeah.
came so far to have what we have today. And these things, when we talk about like the stories, the success stories of people, coming to America. It's not easy. People work hard to get or to become what they are in a present circumstances. So I just want
Yep.
to add one last thing. So we started the Undiscovered Frontiers brand, and behind this brand, there is a years of experience and knowledge. Years of experience and knowledge for Central Asia and other countries. Now, Undiscovered Frontiers at the moment focuses on Central Asia, Turkey, South Caucasus, and other countries in the Middle East like Oman, Saudi Arabia, Jordan. I as Undiscovered Frontiers, we can offer other destinations as well. I've been to many other countries, but with my background on Central Asia, I would like to
Yeah.
present the Central Asia, South Caucasus, Turkey, is a beautiful country, has a lot to offer. And then we will expand and add additional destinations. My favorite destination is Mongolia, is
Ah,
another crazy part of the world. My favorite destination that I really want to offer, and I will be honest with that, is China.
yeah.
China has a lot to offer for the international travelers. I've been many times to Japan. I know so much about the Japanese culture. And when I travel to Japan, people look to my Asian face and they said, "You are too handsome for you are handsome for Japanese." Yeah, I'm getting lots of compliments, but
Uh-huh.
making all these jokes, Undiscovered Frontiers is a brand. We don't want to just sell a repetitive trip.
Yeah, yeah.
We want to create a unique experience. The happiest thing that makes us happy, and example is when the international traveler comes back from his or her trip, they give us like a crazy feedback. Oh my
Hmm.
God, this was this. That makes. Then I say, we did what we're
We
supposed
did
to
it
do.
right.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and I think that that's more likely to happen when you focus on an area, number one, that you know really well,
right,
obviously you
right,
do,
right.
and that you're just passionate about. I think it makes so much more sense to focus on an area like Central Asia than it does to just say, you know what, I'm going to be a travel agent. I love travel agents. And I'm going to be a travel agent and I'm going to build a website and I offer everything
Exactly.
everywhere, everything from celebrity cruises to private African safaris to day tours in San Francisco.
Correct.
It just, that's too much,
Yes, exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah, so I get that. We've discussed so much stuff, Abdylla, and I know that you and I could just keep going and going and
Right.
probably do several episodes. And but I want to be respectful of your time and our listeners as well. So I'm curious, what did I forget to ask you? What do you wish that I'd asked you, or what do you want our listeners to know either about you, Undiscovered Frontiers, Central Asia, life in general, being an immigrant? What else do you want to share before we wrap up?
I will share a couple of things, and one of the things is my recent trip to Uzbekistan. So, Uzbekistan is known for a famous historical sites, but as I mentioned earlier, we created a new itinerary that combines the trekking adventure, staying at the local families in the mountains, and the experience was amazing. We traces the footprints of the white-clawed Tian Shan bear. That's mind blowing. We saw the petroglyphs 65,000 years old, the carvings on the stones
Mm-hmm. Yep.
65,000 years old. We saw like very beautiful nature, touched pristine nature in the mountains of Uzbekistan. We saw such a great hospitality in Uzbekistan, and having this moment and opportunity, I want to thank my buddy Harf, who joined this adventure with me. It shows how adventurous is North American spirit is. He
Mm-hmm.
was like he is a great person. He's from Philadelphia. Now, I also want to mention that Undiscovered Frontiers is a travel company, a tour operator. And I'm happy that you mentioned that we don't want to offer just everything. We
Mm-hmm.
want to offer the niche travel to the destinations like five stands. We want to offer unique experiences. We want to offer travelers to taste and to understand and to feel what Central Asia is, right? So when you come back, you are not only enriched culturally, but at the same time, you try the different food, you sit and talk with the people, you debated on different subjects as
Mm-hmm.
much as your language allows with the locals. So this is a real travel, and I also would like to mention that your podcast is a very interesting podcast, and I'm very happy to be here today.
Thank you.
Big world made small is exactly the story of the power of travel, how the big world made small. The guy from the desert of Karakum, Turkmenistan, made his way all the way to the United States. I started my own travel company, and I want to open American travelers what is a real travel to Central Asia is. Okay, I did a lot of advertisement today.
Beautiful. For you, for me, I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate that you see it in something as simple as the name. But I was on my first trip to Asia. Yeah. I've been around. I'd already been to 30 some countries, but had never been to Asia because it's so far away. And I finally had the opportunity to go. Right. And it was there that I had the idea for the podcast name. It was like this, the world feels so much smaller. Now that I'm here, the world just feels smaller. So that's kind of my way of putting it together there. But anyway, Abdylla, I appreciate you coming on the show. It was great having you on. And thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing your story and the love of Central Asia that you clearly have. For anybody that wasn't able to see the episode, I can see it on the look on your face. Anyway.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's do it again real soon. You have a great day. Bye, Abdylla. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.